Imagine you are walking through the woods, birds suddenly burst from the branches, a deer freezes instantly, staring at you with eyes the size of dinner plates, then bolts like, it just remembered a super important appointment. A squirrel does that weird dance where it darts 3 steps, stops, runs 3 steps, then stops, basically having a complete existential crisis just because you exist. While you just stand there in your overpriced hiking boots, chewing a granola bar. So, what is actually going on here? Why do animals, creatures with sharp claws, venom, horns, speed, and even the crazy ability to detach their own tails, act totally terrified of us? Of soft, slow, mostly hairless apes who get winded from a single flight of stairs? The answer runs way deeper than you think. Honestly, once you understand the science, you will never view a spooked squirrel the same way again. Let us start from the very beginning. Here is a fact that might make you feel a tiny bit uncomfortable. This deep fear that animals have of humans did not start last century. It did not start when humans invented weapons, or farming, or even fire. It began millions of years ago. Evolutionary biologists have a name for this: the landscape of fear. It is the idea that prey animals do not just react to predators, and they are right in front of them. They organize their entire lives around the mere possibility of a threat lurking nearby. Their feeding habits, their sleeping spots, where they drink water, and when they move, is all finely calibrated to avoid death. And for a very, very long time, early humans were part of that deadly calculation. Our ancestors were active hunters. Paleolithic humans were persistence hunters, meaning we did not necessarily have the speed to outrun prey. But we possess something honestly way more terrifying. We just kept walking for hours in the blazing midday sun, until that animal collapsed from pure exhaustion. Imagine being a gazelle and spotting this weird two-legged creature in the distance, just jogging at a steady pace. That was easily one of the most terrifying things you could ever witness. So animals learned, not as single beasts, but generationally. The ones that did not run from human-shaped shadows got eaten, but the ones that fled survived, reproduced, and passed that deep caution on to their babies. Now repeat that process over thousands of generations, and suddenly, you get wild animals that are basically hardwired with an intense human fear baked right into their DNA. Not a learned habit. It is a survival instinct, the ultimate predator theory. Now, this is where things get truly mind-blowing and a bit flattering, to be honest. In 2016, a research team at the University of Western Ontario put out a paper that dropped a pretty wild idea. They claimed that humans are, and to quote them directly, the super predator, which means other predators fear us way more than they fear their rivals. They played simple audio clips to animals, not of other scary predators, not roaring lions or wolves howling, just the sound of people talking, just casual chat, the stuff you would hear at a bus stop. And the results were mind-blowing. Mountain lions ran off at over twice the speed they fled from other threats. Bobcats, deer, skunks, and possums all ran faster and further from human voices than from any other danger. Some top predators, beasts that have no natural enemies, still reacted with total, sheer panic to human sounds. Just think about that. A cougar, an apex hunter, a beast that kills deer for breakfast, sprinting away from the sound of hikers chatting about their weekend plans. But why? Even apex predators retain a deep memory of humans being lethal. We hunted them, too. We stole their territories. We shot them for coming close to livestock. Over time, even the absolute top of the chain learned humans equal danger. We are not just scary as predators. We are scary because we are totally unpredictable. And that uncertainty in the wild is easily the most terrifying thing possible. It is a massive problem. Why does this lack of pattern matter? Well, most wild predators follow patterns. Wolves hunt at twilight hours. Crocs strike from the water. Hawks target small rodents in fields. Prey creatures have adapted over millions of years to decode these routines. And spotting those routines is what keeps them alive. A deer that knows where wolves hunt can easily avoid them. Fish, knowing when herons hunt, can stay deep during those hours. But humans, we hunt whenever we want, day or night. We hunt in packs or completely alone. We use fire, traps, bows, rifles, and even drones. We hunt on land, by water, or from helicopters. We target animals we eat. And species we do not. We hunt things that are dangerous, alongside things that are completely harmless. From an animal's perspective, we make absolutely no sense. We are a wild card they cannot solve, and when you cannot solve that equation, the only smart response is absolute avoidance all the time. There is actually an ecological concept for this called predator recognition. It basically describes how prey identify their threats. Most predators get sorted into very easy categories: big cats, birds, or canines. Animals have highly specific built-in reactions for every category, but we humans do not fit neatly into any box. We smell weird, we move strangely, and make weird noises. Then, sometimes we just feed birds in the park for 20 minutes. We break their algorithm, and that is incredibly unsettling to a wild brain. But wait, what about creatures that are not afraid of us? Good question. You have definitely seen pigeons in a busy square that would literally rather die than move for you. Or those raccoons staring you dead in the eyes while eating your trash. And seagulls snatching a chip directly from your hand while keeping eye contact the whole time just to dominate. So, what is happening here? This is called habituation, and it is one of the most critical concepts in animal behavior. When wildlife is repeatedly exposed to a trigger, like us, for example, without facing any real danger, they'd slowly turn down their fear. It is basically the brain saying, this thing keeps showing up, and nothing bad happens. I'm wasting energy being scared of it, so downgrade the threat. City animals go through this over many generations. Local pigeons have been living right beside us for so long that their natural fear has basically been wiped out. There is no point in fleeing from us if we literally throw food at you every single day. Same with crows. Which leads us to a truly wild example. These birds do not just tolerate us, they can actually recognize individual human faces. Research shows they remember the specific people who treated them badly and will harass them for years. They will even recruit their friends to join in and teach their chicks which humans are dangerous. So, crows haven't just lost their fear of us, they've basically developed a whole culture of human surveillance. They're constantly keeping tabs on us, which is either incredibly cool or just straight up terrifying, depending on how badly you've upset a neighborhood crow. But this island experiment changes the entire game. Now, here is one of the most mind-blowing proofs of why wild animals actually fear us, and it comes from a natural experiment that played out across our oceans, on remote islands and places where humans have never gone, or where we have been gone for ages. There, animals show almost zero fear of us. The Galapagos Islands are probably the best example of this. When Charles Darwin arrived there in the 1830s, he was baffled. The animals simply didn't run. He wrote in his journal about sitting right next to birds that wouldn't fly off, nudging iguanas into the surf and watching them calmly tattle back to sit right beside him again. Marine iguanas, blue-footed boobies, giant tortoises, not a single one ran. None of them cared. The exact same thing happens in parts of Antarctica. Penguins have basically zero fear of humans. They will waddle right up to researchers, inspecting their tripods, even trying to steal stuff. Scientists doing field work must gently push away curious penguins, who are obsessed with their cameras and backpacks. And in marine reserves where fishing has been banned for decades, the fish quickly lose their fear of divers. Scientists have actually documented fish inside protected zones that actively swim right toward humans, while fish in neighboring unprotected areas flee. The lesson here is incredibly clear. The fear of us isn't a default factory setting. It is installed through direct experience. When we stop being an active threat, either because we left, or simply because all hunting stopped, the fear just melts, sometimes in just a few generations. Which means this fear isn't about us personally. It is about our actions. This ecology of fear, and what it truly does to nature. This is where it gets wild, because this constant dread isn't just some quirky animal behavior. It literally rewrites entire habitats. Researchers studying wolves in Yellowstone National Park found something completely unexpected. When those wolves returned to the park in 1995, the deer didn't just die off, their behavior shifted. They quit grazing in open valleys and completely avoided riverbanks. They moved cautiously, spending less time in dangerous spots, and because they stopped overgrazing those valleys, the local plants rebounded. Rivers actually changed course as bank erosion slowed down, forests recovered, entire bird species returned. Even fish thrived as the streams cleared up. All of this simply because wolves made those deer terrify. Fear itself, not the hunting, reshaped their world. Change. Scientists call this phenomenon a landscape of fear. It is one of the most powerful, invisible forces in nature. Now, apply that to us. When we step into the wild as hunters, or even just go hiking, that same panic effect takes over. Wildlife moves differently. They avoid specific places at certain times. They shift their feeding habits. Nighttime activity spikes because the dark provides safety. Animals that once roamed during the day shift their schedules to avoid meeting us. A 2018 study published in Science showed that animals across 6 continents have becoming way more nocturnal to adapt to our constant presence. Wild mammals that once roamed during daylight are shifting to the dark, not from lost forests, but simply because we are around. Our mere presence is enough to rewire the daily routines of wildlife across the globe. We are not just predators. We are an ecological force that is literally changing when animals choose to wake up. And then there is our smell. Look, let's talk about what nobody wants to admit. Creatures might fear us simply because our natural scent is horrific to them. Human body odor is a highly potent chemical signal in nature. We carry a heavy mix of synthetic chemicals, soap, deodorant, laundry detergents, food, plastics, fumes, and other things we don't want to think about, that are completely alien to the natural world. Even stripping all those artificial smells away to focus purely on human odor, that signal is still highly distinct and potent. Predator. Urine is a common deterrent in wildlife management since animals read smells as danger warnings. Our own scent triggers the exact same response. When scientists left scent strips soaked in human sweat near wildlife cameras, the drop-in animal activity was equal to using strips soaked in mountain lion urine. Let that sink in. Just existing and smelling like a living human makes you just as terrifying to wild animals as a mountain lion. Maybe you are already aware of this and treat it as a badge of honor. That is fine. But why do some animals attack instead of fleeing? Good question. If creatures are so terrified of us, why do they charge? Well, the explanation comes down to a very exactly. They aren't acting out of pure malice. They react out of sheer survival. The truth is, most dangerous wildlife encounters happen in just 3 main scenarios. First, when the creature feels trapped without any exit route. Second, it is a mother guarding her babies. Third, the animal gets pushed into extremely close quarters to us as we destroy forests, leaving them incredibly stressed out. In nearly every scenario, the attack is their last resort. It isn't predatory, it's self-defense. Bears are a perfect example. They naturally avoid us completely. Given half a chance, any bear will happily walk away. The trouble is, as our modern neighborhoods crowd their territory, their safety buffer shrinks to nothing. Suddenly, bears are left with fewer choices, less food, and constant forced contact with us. When a panicked creature with no exit gets startled at very close range, it reacts just like any other animal we would. They immediately go on offense. Yes, there are rare exceptions. Polar bears. They are among the few massive predators that will actively stalk human beings. But that makes sense when you remember how these bears evolved in an icy world with 0 major predators besides each other. They had limited food options and absolutely nothing in their history to fear any 2-legged creatures. They simply never got the memo. What happens when animals have never encountered us? The most incredible proof of this behavior comes from first contact moments, times when brave explorers or researchers meet wildlife with absolutely 0 previous exposure to humans. The results are always the same. 0 fear whatsoever. Old travel journals from the Pacific voyages tell of sailors strolling right up to birds that never saw humans and just scooping them up. Early stories of the famously extinct dodo, gone forever because of this, show a creature so completely unafraid of us that catching them took almost 0 work. They literally strolled toward the hunters. Men thought these birds were dumb. They weren't dumb. They just had never learned to feel fear yet. This same behavior still happens in modern settings, when scientists find deeply remote islands, or untouched insect species, or deep ocean life brought up for the first time. Their survival instinct is completely missing, and that gives us a peek at what our planet looked like before we became this giant, looming threat. Not a world without danger, but one where danger did not walk on two legs, hunting from everywhere at once. It's evolutionary survival, but here is the harsh truth we have to face when thinking about this. The terror that wildlife feels around us is totally justified. It's smart. They are reading the situation correctly. Humans have wiped out entire hundreds of species. We have hunted countless populations to collapse. We've wrecked or paved over more than half of the wild areas on Earth. We've even broken the climate. The animals that fear us are, statistically speaking, making the right move. But here is the twist. Because they run, because creatures hide and steer clear of us, we rarely see the true damage we are actually causing. Nature goes quiet. We step into the woods and see less and less, so we assume everything is totally fine. The quiet forest just feels peaceful. Instead of running, this fear actually makes it easy for us to ignore what we are doing. The cruelest part of this cycle of fear is this: it actually hurts wildlife conservation, too. Animals who are terrified of us are harder to research, harder to protect, and tougher to save. Fear builds walls that lock researchers out and stop animals from getting our help. The most traumatized animals are also the hardest to reach. Enter the power of trust, and why it matters so much. But let us look at the good news, because this is honestly one of the most exciting things happening in wildlife conservation right now. Scientists are starting to realize that, with the right kind of setup, environment, and consistent, peaceful human contact, food security, and zero hunting, wild animals can learn to trust us in a surprisingly short time. Take the gorilla tourism programs in Rwanda and Uganda. They have seen wild gorilla groups go from fleeing park rangers to tolerating and, in some cases, actually enjoying the presence of human observers over the course of just a few years of careful, respectful trust building. And not because those gorillas forgot to be afraid, but because they were given enough clues to update their mental map. These particular people in this exact spot, always peaceful, zero threats, no danger. Fear is learned, and unlearning works the exact same way. Rewilded zones, where hunting and human activity have been completely stopped, show wildlife slowly reclaiming their natural daily routines. Daytime feeding returns, open spaces fill up. That tense, hypervigilant state of hunted animal groups finally relax. The entire map of fear can fade. It just needs us humans to be reliably, constantly, and clearly not a threat. And knowing our messy track record, that's a huge project. Wildlife is terrified of us, since we spent millions of years earning that reputation. We are the most adaptable, relentless, unpredictable, and dominating top predators this planet has ever seen. We hunt every continent, in every climate, at any hour. We don't fit any patterns wild brains know how to process. We have wiped out entire species on every land mass we had ever stepped on. We disrupt nature by just showing up. That little squirrel panicking on your lawn isn't just being dramatic. It's running ancient survival software that's been refined over hundreds of thousands of years. It honestly has no idea that you're just trying to eat a quick snack and enjoy the view. But here's the thing. The exact same intelligence that makes us so terrifying, our bright creativity, our adaptability, and sheer capability is also what lets us choose to behave differently. The wild animals that live in places where we are actually safe do not run. They don't hide. They live right out in the open, by daylight, going about their day without wasting so much energy on constant paranoia. That version of our world exists. It lives in pockets, in refuges, and on islands where the experiment lasted long enough. The reign of fear is not permanent. It is just a reflection of behavior. And behavior can change. The big question is whether we are interesting enough to